I kind of make a little introduction here, and hopefully I can try to get her on. So this is a unique opportunity for us to talk about aphasia, the lived experience. I do want to clarify that today, the people that are going to be talking do not have aphasia from stroke or a type of brain injury, but not from primary progressive aphasia. And that is something that's really important because we have a lot of folks in TAP that have PPA and their families, and we do want to present that as well. So we're going to have a separate format to talk about PPA. So I did say without further ado once already, so I'm back. And I'm really excited to introduce some of our TAP families. But because I like them to live the experience of aphasia, I'm going to make them do it themselves. So I'm going to start with people I've known the longest, which are Sammy and Alex. And I was wondering if you all can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about, your aphasia story, what happened, and then we'll introduce Tony, and then we have some conversation.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Good start.
Hello. My name's Alex. I have a stroke and aphasia and chemo for 3 years. Really good.
I'm Sammy. I'm his wife. So also going through this aphasia journey with him. So Alex had his stroke in July of 2019.
22.
Yes. So it was 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years ago next month that he had his stroke. And we have just been, living with aphasia and the effects of that afterwards, and have found TAP through all of that, and really been able to utilize the resources that TAP has kind of given us to help deal with something that we had no idea of what it was or what existed or anything. We had never dealt with a speech therapist, any type of therapist at that point. So it was a whole new world to us, and obviously very overwhelming to begin with. When you are put into such a stressful situation, that you've never had to deal with before. So, so TAP was really introduced to us in the beginning, which was very grateful for that resource in the start.
Awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourself. I have many more questions about your experience and what you went through, because Alex, you're a very young man, and I think that people make assumptions that stroke happens to older adults, and they don't think that somebody who is young like you would have a stroke. Was that something that your friends and family were really shocked to hear too?
Yes, completely shocked. Very nervous about.
I think so. The stroke happened when he was 28. So, even when they were asking me questions at the very beginning, I could tell, but because I'm in the medical profession, I could kind of tell what they were getting at that they thought happened, but I was like, there's no way that he had a stroke. He's only 28 years old. That's not even on our radar. So, those type of things that we didn't think of. But it was definitely, a lot of people didn't think that was what had actually happened, until we went further down the road and saw that it was,
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I'd love if Tony could introduce himself, and Tony, share a little bit about, how we got to know each other.
Yeah, thanks, Maura. I'm Tony Barger. I am a licensed occupational therapist, and I now work as a leader in healthcare compliance for a nationally recognized organization. But I actually had a physical injury. I tore my carotid artery. I don't really know when that happened. I suspect when it happened. but I had an ischemic stroke. So my carotid artery was completely blocked, and it led to me having stroke-like symptoms, which I ended up not being able to talk. I couldn't move my right arm. I made it to the hospital in about an hour, was given a clot buster, and ended up having 3 stents put in my carotid artery, which definitely opened everything back up, but I had severe aphasia when I came out of that procedure. I couldn't formulate thoughts. I couldn't tell the story of what happened earlier that day that brought me to the hospital. And I had trouble recognizing familiar objects, naming those, even though I knew exactly what was going on, what was being asked of me, and couldn't communicate any of that at all. And so I learned of TAP also while I was in the neuro ICU at the hospital. The speech language pathologist told me about TAP. And I'm so grateful that I found TAP, because I was able to start outpatient speech therapy services, but wasn't able to do that for almost a month after my event. So it was, I was grateful to be able to join TAP and get to know more all of the leaders, and certainly all of the other TAP clients. So. I think you might be muted again, Mara.
Sorry. So I was trying to get Lisa on still, but that was, I keep thinking about if somebody, Sammy's in the medical field, Tony, you're an occupational therapist, like knowing a little bit, is that a dangerous thing? Is it something that was more reassuring to you or more frightening to you guys?
It was terrifying to me. Because I have worked with patients in the past that were directly, dealing with the ramifications of a stroke. And so my symptoms immediately, even though I couldn't communicate, I knew exactly what was going on. And even to the point of when things started to worsen, when I was at the hospital and was watching the staff work around me, it was challenging just because I could see physically what was happening, but I also was recognizing that my brain wasn't allowing me to communicate in the way that I wanted to.
Yeah, you gave me chills when you explained that.
Yeah.
Alex, when you were trying to communicate, did you recognize that you knew what you wanted to say?
Yeah, very true. My brain is so good, but my talking is so hard. Yeah.
Do either of you remember what it felt like to actually experience that aphasia? Like, did you try to search to explain something a different way? Did you try to write something or gesture? I imagine that feeling of, especially knowing whoa, my brain, I know everything. I'm looking at these people and I know. Tell me about that.
Can you repeat it, please?
Sure.
Yeah.
That was a lot of talking on my part. A lot of that doesn't help people with aphasia. Yeah. When you were experiencing the difficulty, you said, "I know my brain was fine."
Yeah.
Did you feel like you needed to do something else to get people to know that you knew?
Felt like something right in my some feeling and sensation, but 30 seconds, it's so it's very suddenly. Yeah.
Okay.
When
so
it hit you, it was very
Yeah.
sudden.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
And Sammy, were you there when that happened? And
I was not. So We unfortunately were in the situation where Alex was not found for about 8 hours. So we were very much outside the clot buster, you know, window of treatment and things like that. So unfortunately, you know, that was tough because I had no idea what was going on. The last I had heard from Alex was a text message at 10 a.m. that morning saying, I feel really great today. And then they assume probably around 10:30 or 11 is when his stroke hit. And I didn't get home from work until around 8 o'clock. So that was when, so it was about an 8-hour window before we got him to the emergency room.
And to go back to that question, Sammy, about like being in the medical field now, walking in and seeing your husband of, I mean, how long have you guys had been married?
At that point, 3 years.
Yeah,
we had our 3-year anniversary in the ICU. Yeah,
because I remember the beautiful pictures on your walls. So what did that feel like? I think it's important for people to realize this is not just happening to Alex. This is not just happening to Tony. You know, Tony's loved ones were going through the same thing. So
right. I mean, at that point when I was there, I had no idea what was going on. So Alex was going through chemo treatments at the time of his stroke, which is what they attribute his stroke to. So I didn't know if there was a side effect, if he had taken too much of his medication and had some sort of overdose type situation, or because he was slurring and wasn't able to speak. They had told me on the phone that he was conscious but unresponsive. So I wasn't sure exactly what the situation was. And then getting to the emergency room, actually, he didn't have his wallet on him. So he was labeled as a John Doe for the first 3 hours that we were there. So I didn't even know what was going on with him at the emergency room because I wasn't allowed to be there because they hadn't identified him at that point either. So I was definitely going through it because I had no idea, you know, if he was alive, if he wasn't, what was happening. You know, so, and especially like you said, being in the medical field, I know how precious that time is to know, you know, you need to know what's going on. And I wanted to be there to be able to let them know, like, oh, he is going through treatments and this is what his allergies are. And this is, you know, those type of things that I felt like I could help out with. You know, so yeah, I mean, it was definitely scary. A lot of decisions had to be made very quickly. And, you know, it was a rough, like 48 hours probably. I
had a similar experience when my mom had her stroke because she was driving when she had a bleed. So she just kept getting, you know, worse and worse. And I had been, you know, pretty much calling every 2 seconds trying to reach her. And so the state trooper who actually saved her life saw the phone and saw all these like calls and called me. And the reason I'm bringing this up is he said, your mother is alive, but she's unable to talk. And I guess she had like reached to go out of the car and couldn't get there because the right side was paralyzed. And I said, give her the phone. And he said, she can't, ma'am, she can't talk. And I said, give her the phone because I felt this need. I wanted to say, I got you. I know, you know, I want you to know we're coming and we're going to be there. And I feel like your desperation, even as you were talking of like, let me update you. Let me tell you about the history. Tony, can you add to this? This is a fascinating discussion of kind of that initial period.
I mean, my partner is who discovered me when I was having my symptoms and recognized immediately that something was very wrong because I wasn't moving. I was standing. So when I first had my symptoms, I was standing at the sink and had reached in to grab something, was fine, turned back to the sink, and then realized my right arm isn't working and I couldn't talk. I ended up falling into a cabinet, and the startle of the cabinet, me hitting the cabinet, is what woke them up. came in, recognized immediately. But like that whole question, Maura, that you raised about like when you're in that moment and you're not communicating clearly and you're trying to address and answer the question, but you're struggling to do it. I think my family could recognize that I knew what was going on because they could see the frustration in my face. But I did try to kind of talk around what I was trying to get to, and in order to try to get back to what I was actually trying to say, but it just wasn't working. My brain wasn't connecting the dots, but the speech language pathologist was recognizing for sure what was happening and was trying to kind of guide that process to help me try to land on what I was trying to communicate. And that just got better over time in trying to do that.
Yeah. It's, I could feel
initially,
what,
it just couldn't get the words out.
I think that everybody watching is feeling that kind of, you know, effort that you were going through. And you feel, as a care partner, you also feel really, really helpless because you don't know what to do. And I think that one of the things we emphasize at TAP is, you know, strokes and aphasia doesn't happen to one person. It happens to, and not just a spouse or a care partner, it's also your, you know, your kids, your grandkids, your mother, your sister, your aunt, you know, it's all of the people that are, you know, kind of on your phone, right? You know, all your contacts. And I think that that's an important part to remember too, is that this isn't just happening to you, right?
Can I give you a good example of that,
Please,
Maura?
please.
So this is once I started feeling a little better and I felt like I could actually start to get out of the house a little bit and to go out. But I recognized pretty early that my ability to kind of process everything that's going on in the environment, you know, being in a restaurant, banging of silverware and plates and people moving around and all of that was still very challenging. And then, you know, and then there's my friends and family sitting in front of me trying to have a conversation with one another and have a conversation with me and everything else that's going on, to where it was unbelievably stressful. But it was hard for them to recognize that I was going through that because I look okay, right? But I'm maybe not saying anything. And that's what I would kind of share with everybody else that wonders about like what it's like living with aphasia. I had to tell them, it's just too much right now. Like, you're all talking too much and you're switching topics so quickly, I can't even keep up because I'm still on 3 topics ago. I would imagine, Alex, you feel that way too.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was such a great description. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a care partner, it's very much, you have to rework the way that you have a conversation with the person. I have to recognize, okay, it's a lot of maybe what I'm saying is not making sense to you. So it's a lot of creativity of how can I reword this or put other things into context so that I am able to have a fluent conversation,
Yes.
You know, to make sure that you are included and are understanding what's going on with all of the environment around you.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's like, it's so much like meta awareness. Like you have to be thinking constantly like, okay, well, how can I tell them I know what's going on? But also now, how do I reword that? It just seems a little bit like, you know, a lot of plates in the air at the same time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that, you know, one of the things we've talked a little bit about is, you know, that it just doesn't happen to you and that happens to other people. But I know that the past couple of years have been different. But what about friends and friendships, and not just the people who obviously love you and are going to be there and care for you, but people that you are associated with either professionally or through friendships? How do you navigate that as a young person with aphasia?
Well, my mom and dad and brother and sister is okay. It's normal and talk to normal people, but my friend is, it's hard to understand my feelings, but personally, for myself is a huge leap, and then starting to reach out to different people.
Yeah, I think it's really a confidence level type thing where you almost, I mean, I can't speak for you, but for your, I feel like maybe it's a self-conscious thing
Yes.
that these people knew me before I had aphasia.
Yeah.
So how are they going to react to me now that I'm a different person, or that I communicate differently? And are they going to be able to accept me as that, the way that I am now? Or are they going to be able to even understand what I'm doing? So it's a huge thing to be able to reach out to those people, and put yourself in that vulnerable state where they may not accept me, or they may not understand what's going on. Are they willing to accept that and, you know, work to being able to communicate, which is something, you know, that you do still struggle with on a daily basis, for sure.
Every single all day, but it's a tiny step recovery. Yeah.
I love that you're emphasizing confidence, because I often tell people that it's more about a lack of confidence than a lack of language. And I know that sounds, you know, extreme, but it messes with your confidence. Would you agree, Tony? Do you have some thoughts on that?
500%. We were talking a little bit earlier, and I've shared this with, you know, family and friends and colleagues also, that for me, like, I made a very conscious decision early on that I was just going to kind of rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak, and come right out with it and tell people, you know, I've had a stroke, I have aphasia. There are times where I might struggle with the fluency or how quick I'm talking, or I may be thinking of words, or I may say the wrong thing. That's why. And it really helped my confidence, actually, because it got rid of the anxiety of what, and Alex, I still deal with that myself every day, even though, I may sound, oh, great, Lisa's connecting. That's wonderful.
Yes, I'm thanking publicly Abby. Simon is one of our awesome group leaders who I texted, and she got Lisa there. Lisa, we
great.
We need to see your pretty face. There she is.
There we are. Hi, Lisa.
Lisa, I don't know if you've been listening a little bit, but I think Tony was just talking a little bit about confidence. And before we have you introduce, I'd love you to finish that thought, because we're getting some great comments. I saw Kevin Joel had noted on Facebook that there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. And that when somebody kind of says, oh, I feel so bad for you that this has happened to you, versus I cannot possibly put myself in your shoes. But yeah. Did you want to finish that thought, Tony? And then we can.
I think that's one of the things I think that TAP has actually brought to me, is help to strengthen my confidence, not because of feeling bad because other people are going through it, but recognizing that you're not alone and that others hear you when you have those moments where your confidence isn't great. or isn't what you hoped it to be. And it's a safe place to kind of work through, you know, those moments, right? When you are struggling and you are trying to put the pieces together, and maybe it's not lining up, but others are there to jump in to try to help because they've been through it themselves. And I think that actually has built that confidence, along with family and friends and others that are just being patient and giving you that space to keep trying to work through it, even though you're not making it happen in that moment.
Oh, Tony, you're getting emphatic yeses from everybody here, and it is something I want to come back to, because I think there's a lot of power in community, and it is, especially when you have the opportunity to have people that are within your, direct community. Like within weeks, you were able to meet some of these folks and walk with them at Strides, and it was like not just a virtual I got you, but a, connection. Lisa, I'm so happy you're here, and I owe Abby something for helping you get on, but
Yes.
would you mind introducing yourself and explain, how aphasia came into your world? And
I have aphasia about 3.5 years ago, but it suddenly came on and it's like, oh my God, what is this? But I was thinking about I was gonna be better, but now I have aphasia. So it's like I work with it, but it's like slowly. But it's taking its time, but it's 3.5 years since I have aphasia. So it's like, well, okay.
Lisa, in one of our groups last week, in the Tap Inspire group, one of the clients said, when I woke up and saw that my arm wasn't working and I wasn't able to talk, he thought, I'm going to have to work on this. I'll be back to work though. I'll take off a month or so and then I'll be back to work.
It's like, oh, I'll be back about 3 months and that's it. But now it's like my arm was working fine, my legs are working fine, but it's the mind. It's like it's so much stuff that goes to the mind. It's like I have to do this, I have to do this one, I have to do this one, but it's like oh shoot, it's 3.5 years since I have it. It's like wow, but now I'm just doing it bit by bit, bit by bit, because Tony was saying, oh, you be sorry for yourself. No, I'm alive. I am alive. My arms are working fine. Excuse me, my clothes is in the bed because I'm going away now. I'm going away now.
Hey, it's live.
I'm going away, so
it
it's
happens.
like my clothes is on the bed. So it's like it's like not empathy or sympathy. It's like I'm doing fine. It's like taking it slowly.
And so you could relate to what they were talking about with that kind of building your confidence. One of the people that are on Facebook is saying, if you have a family member who has aphasia, so maybe Alex, you can, or Sammy, you can help with this, but you all can chime in here. How do you help them improve their confidence? How do you support that toe in the water? Do you want to start, Sammy?
Yeah. So for me, I feel I guess Alex can attest whether I'm doing a good job at this or not, but
we won't tell her. Go ahead.
I feel like for my role is to make sure that, like I said kind of earlier, that I facilitate and kind of recognize if there is something maybe he's not understanding, or give him the space to feel safe enough with me to be able to say, if we're in a crowded room, hey, I need to get out of here for a minute, or what did they just say? I'm not really understanding that. Can you explain it to me? And have, you know, our own side conversation and make sure that he's included, because if you're sitting in a room and everything's going around you, you're not participating. And so I want to make sure that just because he may not be able to verbally say what is going on in his head, that he still is very present in anything that he's doing. And I know that he's understanding, he's taking it all in, but I don't want him to feel like he's not able to participate or be doing what other people are doing just because there is potentially a communication barrier there.
Exactly. It's the it's a barrier, but it's not unsurmountable, right? I know when my mom was alive, we would have a little signal, kind of like the Carol Burnett, like tug the ear of like, I need some help here. And instead of looking at me with like that kind of fix, you know, help the situation, she would go, you know, and I was, oh, she needs a little bit of help. So were you going to add something, Lisa?
Okay. I'm here by myself, right? I'm in my house by myself. But it's like, I want help, but I don't know how to get help. So I do everything by myself, you know? It's me and everybody else, but it's like they have each other.
Yeah.
You know? They have each other. But it's like, wow, I don't want to go outside and ask somebody for help, you know? So it's like, shoot, well, I'm in my house by myself. So what do I do? And I jot down. Well, I text, but it's like, what do I do now? So I leave it alone. And then, oh, I got it. I have to go to the store, or I have to go to somebody else, you know, but I'm by myself.
Yeah. So I remember when I started TAP 19 years ago, the statistics then were that 92% of people with aphasia, according to the National Aphasia Association, considered themselves socially isolated.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart. And then I thought, well, it's one thing if you have a partner, if you have somebody that's with you, but you're right. It's, you know, what happens? My mom was a widow, you know, she didn't have anybody other than her family. And that's one of the reasons that TAP was built, to make a community. And of course, as we've said, this couple of years have been a little strange, you know. I miss kind of leaning over somebody and cueing them and laughing. And this office has been very quiet. But I would ask all of you guys is, what do you do to kind of make sure that other people know? We're getting more and more comments of like, how do I let other people know that my dad is okay and he's there? You're like, so you said, Sammy, that you take Alex sometimes, you know, aside and you'll have a conversation, but what do you do in terms of his friends, or Tony, your family, like your partner, what does he do to be able to help kind of you?
Yeah, there's a balance between like jumping in and trying to finish the sentence versus like giving the space to kind of allow me. And I think it's like when, I mean, because my speech has definitely improved dramatically since I came home from the hospital, but there are moments still when I get a little off track, and then it seems like it's a snowball running down the hill. Like you keep trying to get out from in front of the snowball, but it keeps kind of dragging you back in, I guess. Trying to keep it lighthearted, but it's recognizing that. He recognizes that, my family recognizes it, and they may just kind of either step in or just let me give the space, or I will give kind of a cue, and I'm like, I'm gonna go over here for a second.
Right.
And it's usually it's usually enough. And I'll even say, hey, I'm getting tired, guys. I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to lay down on the couch for a little bit, but I'll be fine. I'll be back.
Yeah.
And then I just disappear for a while.
I love how all of you guys are talking about kind of bringing it to up, like the elephants in the room, talk about it so that it makes everybody more comfortable and it evens out those playing fields. Sammy, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think what you said, Tony, that's huge. My goal is to not speak over him or to fill in what he's saying. My goal is to create the environment for him to be able to speak for himself.
Exactly.
That is something that I've had to, when you see somebody struggling that you love, you want to jump in, you want to help, you want to do that, but you're not allowing them to grow or to speak for themselves doing that.
Take your time. It's like, please take your time. It's like, what is it? But don't speak for them.
Absolutely.
Don't speak for them.
Right.
They have to learn to speak for themselves.
And I think what I can do is allow, if people see me responding that way and knowing, this is my husband, I deal with it all the time, then his friends won't feel awkward if they're like, long silences are awkward for people, but it's something that you get comfortable with because that is his processing time and that's what he needs to be able to do the conversation. So if they see me and see that I'm comfortable and allowing him to speak and, rephrasing potentially what he's saying for other people, then if I put off that comfortability level, then I think it helps to make other people that may not know how to react to the situation also feel comfortable in the situation.
Yeah.
Alex, does that help you?
Yeah, totally makes sense. I totally agree with that.
I want to record and re-record and just have you say that over again, what you said, Sammy, because then Lisa followed it up with, don't help them unless they ask you to help them. Don't, jump in unless you're, because it doesn't do anything good from a neuroplastic standpoint. It doesn't do anything. But I want you to say that again, that you don't want to, you see someone you love struggling. You don't want to fill in for them, but you wanted to create. Do you remember how you said it? It was so beautiful.
I don't know what I said.
It was creating an environment.
Right.
And it was beautiful. It's exactly, it's exactly what we need to hear as speech pathologists too, to instruct families to help give the communicative partner a role. And the role is create an environment where they feel safe, where they feel that they have the support and that is going to shine. I loved that. That was amazing. Amazing. I would love to go to some of the, people are just commenting and questioning. You guys feel free to jump in if I'm not going in the right direction. But I would say with so many people not understanding aphasia, what is something, and I'd like each of you to speak to this, what is something you wish people knew about aphasia? Like if you've got the floor, what do you wish people knew about aphasia?
Listen and learn. Okay, listen and learn. It's like aphasia is like it's not speaking. It's not speaking in tongues. It's like I have aphasia. Bear with me. Just bear with me and listen.
Yes.
Okay? Just listen. Just listen.
I love it. Lisa, yes, just listen. Get over yourself. I'll be fine. Just listen. Tony, can you add to that? What do you wish people knew about aphasia?
Aphasia affects so many people in so many different ways, but I think the one thing I think about is the same person that you've always known is still there. And it's just the brain's way of how it's putting it all together is just not quite working the same way that it was. And that just because someone struggles to communicate doesn't mean that they don't have intellect, right? Or that their intelligence has changed any, because that's,
it's not.
as a healthcare worker myself, even in that moment when I was at the worst of the worst, I recognized 100% what was going on around me and couldn't communicate. So I was fully aware, fully understood what was being asked. I just couldn't respond. And that's, I mean, I think that's pretty powerful in not understanding what aphasia is if you don't have that grasp.
I love, Tony, that you pointed out the person is the same. You know, they're still the same person. They have a like Sammy said, it's a communication barrier, and that is not their intellect, and it is not their memory. Even if they say things like, I don't know, or I can't remember, that really, I always say it's a matter of access, right? It's ability to get to the word. Yeah.
No.
Alex, Sammy, what do you wish that you guys are one person, like Ben and Jen or whatever?
Yeah. Make a list.
Make a list.
It's so good, but it's so bad. My memory is fuzzy. Make a list.
So I think, so you're saying maybe to try to access different types of communication where if maybe one type isn't working. I mean, we have whiteboards all over the apartment. We have, you know, if I need something for dinner, I will have a list and write, and then I will text, and then I will, like, different types of communication. Just because one part is not working at that point of the speaking part, well, that doesn't mean that you can't maybe type it out or write it, or you know, so there are so many different ways to communicate that just because somebody is not able to verbally communicate with you at that time does not mean they're not going to be able to get their point across if you allow for other avenues to access that. So I think that's a huge part of aphasia.
It's so good. Making a list, making a grocery store just is so helpful
to learn what works for you, and when you need a crutch or you need a different way of doing it, that there's always something to access to make sure that the person is able to be included and still able to.
I saw that Joel mentioned inclusion, and people are commenting that we know they know the same as before, but the emphasis that you guys are putting on that just because it's not working right this moment, let's use a communication support. Don't talk about where you're going without having your map open on your phone. You know, don't talk about going to the grocery store without a, like, you know, Alex is saying, like, without a list. You need supports, and there's nothing wrong with supports.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with support.
Yeah. The thing that drives me nuts the most is we will have people who, like, will talk to me and say, well, does he need to do this? And I'm like, well, I don't know. He's standing right here. Ask him. You know, ask him. I'm not speaking for him. Like, it's all about, you know, making sure that you are present and people address you as opposed to talking to me. Yes, I do fill in where needs be, but I'm not your mouthpiece. You are capable of being able to make your decisions and speak for yourself.
Exactly.
This. So, this.
Amazing.
Do not look at the other person. I mean, I was sat in the doctor's office with my mom many times, and they would look at me and go, how's she doing? And I'm like, Did you not see her? She's
Ask
like-
her. You
Yeah,
know?
she's right there.
You know,
Yeah.
ask her.
So people are asking, so if you all have questions, as we wind down the last 10 minutes, if you have questions, please put them on the Facebook or in the chat or question and answer here. If you're in the webinar or comments, I will be happy to share as they scroll by some of the comments. As a speech pathologist, and I know that Tony will have a viewpoint as an occupational therapist as well, but you guys have told us what friends should know and what family should know, but I'd like you to talk to the providers, speech pathologists. What constitutes for you good therapy? What has helped you and what has not been so helpful? Because this is really important for us as we train new speech pathologists to hear what you guys are saying. So if you could share, what do you wish your speech therapist had done, or what did they do that really helped or didn't help?
Okay. The first thing, my speech is amazing. At online is so helpful, and to read aloud and read a paragraph or use sentence, or it's so amazing to understand and to try and not fail, but it's just called
Repetition.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So you really thought that reading aloud was helpful, and also to challenge yourself a little bit with reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that as a profession, sometimes we underestimate what people can do. We start at like the lowest level and go up, and we probably should start somewhere a little higher and then add or take away cues as they're needed to give people that confidence. Yeah. Lisa, what in your speech therapy experience, is there things that were helpful or things that you wish they would have done, or if you could talk to the speech therapists of the world?
Everything that she did, I appreciate it. And it's like I try to do everything differently, but the same. So because it's 3.5 years, well, it's 4 years, about August, right? So it's like, oh man, what did I do now? What did I learn now?
So you're constantly learning? You're
Yeah.
still learning.
Yeah. Because it's hard, because it's hard for me to justify it. It's like I know this, like left hand and the right hand is different. It's like, wow, I'm still learning.
Good. That you can keep learning and
I have to because it's like I forget, but oh shoot, I forgot about other things, but I remember, but I forget.
Yeah, let's call it that you have trouble pulling it.
Yeah.
Access. Tony, what do you think about that question of how can we get better at service?
Something that has stuck with me this entire time during my recovery is my first interaction with a speech language pathologist in the ICU, because that's when I was at my worst. And it was presence. He was present.
Yes.
He wasn't rushed. I was a nerd, and I went back and looked in my medical records later because I was just curious about all of the events that happened. And I realized that was the 4th time that he had tried to come and see me. It was at the end of the day. So he had a long day. He was present. He took his time. He listened to me struggle and tried to help me to communicate because he could see how frustrated I was. And that stuck with me, and it still does today. So I think it's presence and patience. And then the other side of it is when I came back for outpatient, yeah, my speech had improved so much, but I was still struggling quite a bit. And the speech language pathologist sat and listened because she didn't just assume that because I was communicating, I was able to communicate, that was enough, right?
Yeah.
And so she kept trying to peel the layers of the onion back further to figure out where my greatest challenges were, and we landed on it. And she gave me solutions to try to work through what those challenges were, and that helped me to go back to work.
I love that. I was talking to a colleague earlier today about how they're trying to kind of get rid of some of the mild, moderate, levels. And I think it's because the impact is, if you can have a mild aphasia and still have significant impact to your life. And I've seen people who had significant communication deficits who communicate better than people who don't have aphasia. So,
Yeah.
There are some great just comments. If you all have any comments, please put them on Facebook. That's why I keep looking down here, or on the question answer. But since we're winding down in time, we only have a couple minutes. I would love if you would each just, take just a minute or two and just give us this lived experience. What are you hopeful about? We haven't talked a lot about TAP, but we have talked about community. We would love to serve you better all the time. So what we've done well and what we can help you with, please share that. So anyone want to jump on that one? The last kind of wind up statement.
Okay, I'll go first.
Go,
First thing, conversation. Number uno. It's conversation and laughter and joyful, and makes me happy to, it's exciting. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah.
Conversation, laughter, joyful.
Yeah.
Yes.
And community.
Yes.
Yes.
Unity. I'm writing that one down.
Yes.
Mhm.
So when the work is
Confidence
conversation,
building.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Tony?
I would echo all of what Alex said. It's confidence building.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Community.
And, I think maybe it's even, where there may be opportunity is thinking about how do you go into those difficult situations. So maybe it's having more of that opportunity to role play on those difficult situations. Because I think as much as I think everyone has worked to prepare me, and even the work that I've tried to accomplish, you can never have too much, what's the word I'm looking for? Exposure, right? Exposure to those challenging situations. Because again, it's a safe space to be able to kind of work through those before you have to go out and really do it.
Yeah, that's like Lisa said, kind of challenge me a little bit. Come
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
bring it, right?
Yeah.
Alex, you remember me telling you to say, bring it.
Mhm.
Come on, challenge me. Well, if I will speak for the people that are commenting, and on behalf of Justine, Amy, and myself, and all the group leaders, our board of directors, like, we are so incredibly grateful for your vulnerability, for your time, for sharing. There's just so many comments coming through about how powerful your story has been. And I do encourage you to keep sharing your story with us, with your friends, in any way you can, to make life easier for the next person with aphasia. So it is my honor to know each of you and to serve you. Thank you guys so much. Mwah! And happy June. Keep it up, guys.
Happy June.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.